Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we will be discussing how you can choose the perfect OpenAI model for your use case. The reason we are going over this is specifically because OpenAI released really good models last week at what I consider better prices than before, even though they're still not to my liking. I find them to be a little bit expensive compared to Gemini or what DeepSeek has to offer, but they are still really good models at a more reasonable price. So I thought we could make a video to understand this whole galore of all the models they have available. So if we open the models page here, we will see that the featured models are the ones we will talk about today. GPT 4.1, O4 Mini, and O3. However, if we scroll a little bit down, you will see there's the reasoning models family, the cost optimized models, the flagship models, real-time, older models. It is really hard to get a feeling of what model you should be choosing. So I want to take a step back and look at the different families of OpenAI models. So the first family are the flagship models. These are generally the GPT dash a number. So these are evolutions in time of the classic GPT models that started with GPT-1, GPT-2, and GPT-3 was when ChatGPT was released. So under the hood, we were using GPT-3 and 3.5. And when we say these are flagship models, it is because these models are quite able to do pretty much a little bit of everything at a decent price. And they're not too specialized, but they're also really good at tasks like text analysis, text generation. So these flagship models are the ones that you will want to use in most more intensive AI applications. So let's take an example. Imagine you are a company with 10 restaurants and you want to analyze your Google reviews for your restaurants every week. You would use something like the GPT models to conduct a full analysis of the sentiment. You would try to then make the data analysis on it, how many people left comments. So for these kind of more involved tasks that require good AI capacities, good language capacities, you will want to stick with the flagship models. There are other use cases when you will want to look at the reasoning models, and we'll go over those in a second. These use cases are more generally when you want to have more critical thinking, when you want to have problem solving that takes a bit more steps. But let's not focus on those yet. So currently, in the flagship models, the one you want to use is GPT 4.1. GPT 4.5 is available. It is, however, considered more of a research preview for the future GPT models, and it is out of cost. It is, I would say, not competitive on cost to other models of its capacities, which is why last week OpenAI released GPT 4.1. So if you're building an AI SaaS that has access to a chatbot inside it, or you rely on AI automations in workflows, a little bit like what we described in the restaurant use case, you will want to use GPT 4.1 if you work with OpenAI. It has a great context window, so it's also able to do a lot of coding. It will be good at doing specific tasks in coding. So for example, it will be good at writing documentation, functions, and so forth, but it will not be the strongest at problem solving. So this is why we say 4.1 is a flagship model. It's able to work on many different kind of things. It's not specialized, but it's really good. It's quite fast. It has a big context window. And honestly, the pricing is pretty decent. I would say it's still not competitive to me when we focus on things like DeepSeek R1 or GPT 2.5. I still think the pricing of those two models is much better. However, 4.1 is a really great model at an honest price. So this is the one you will want to use for most cases when you're building applications, or if you're doing regular vibe coding and you're not doing the architect kind of approach. Let's go now see the other two families of models. So if we take a step back, this gets a little bit more confusing because they both have O in the naming scheme. If we look at the Omni family of models, the O stands for Omni, meaning it's multimodal, it's able to do everything. That's a bit the idea behind this naming scheme. This is the family of model that was introduced last year in around, I would say, Q1 of 2024, where we got the GPT-4.0 model. When it first came out, these models were a bit seen as lackluster in coding. So they were quick. They were able to look images, do vision, do audio. This is why the Omni, because it was able to do everything, being multimodal. However, the reasoning capacities, even though this model was quite cheap and fast, the reasoning capacities were not there. They were not able to do complex tasks. They were okay at a lot of things, but they were not great at real deep technical tasks. So the Omni family is the kind of models you will want to use if you're building a consumer application for simple daily life kind of applications. If you're building, for example, a recipe chatbot, your grandmother wants to see what goes into her peach pie cobbler or whatever, or if you want to do travel booking, if you want to do calls, this is the kind of model you will want to use. These are consumer models. They're great for simple tasks, but they're not going to go and apply to a PhD exam. This is where instead we will see the other family of models. These are the reasoning models. The reasoning models are fascinating. They were released first with O1. O1 was the first model. And if we look a little bit, for example, at the pricing of O3, they can get expensive. And there's a good reason behind that. So output tokens per million output token, they get to $40. This is really expensive. And one of these reasons is that these models are given more time to plan an answer. This is the concept of test time compute. This is a concept that means, what if we let these models more time to reflect on their answer and look for a better way of answering? So to think about all of the variables in a problem instead of just predict the next batch of text. So these models, because they are using more compute, because they are trying to do more advanced problem solving, they are more expensive. The first one that was introduced was OpenAI O1, GPT-0.1, sorry. But more recently, OpenAI came up with two new models, which are a good tandem for vibe coding use cases. So let's first talk about O3. So O3 is the most expensive one, extremely powerful, has a pretty decent context window of 200,000 tokens. So you won't fit an entire code repository of a production, like application in there, but you can still make most of the cursor or root client agent kind of queries fit in that context window. So you will want to use O3 when you want to one-shot your coding implementation. And let me explain what I mean by this. The quality of the output in vibe coding will always depend on your prompt. So the more time you prepare your prompt, you give it the best context, and you detail exactly what you want, is when you will get the best results. So if you take the time to really, work on your prompt into your vibe coding session, into your AI requirements, this is when O3 will make the most sense, because you will not have to prompt it 4 or 5 times. It will generally produce code which is error-free from the start and will adapt to its environment really well because it has a lot of time to think. However, it will be hard if you're relying on a lot of trial and errors. This can add up quickly. You can rack up a bill of a few $100s in a day of coding if you're not careful with this. If you are instead more coding with AI in a way where making lots of changes, you're not sure where you want to go, instead, you will want to use the O4 Mini. So let's just go back a bit at this scheme to understand what's the difference between O1, O3, O4. The number is simply a matter of generation. So O1 was the first generation, O3 was released, I think, maybe 4 months ago, and O4 was just released. They skipped O2 because they thought it was going to be mixed with oxygen or something. And then there's, in the naming scheme, different things. So when you see high, it means, for example, O1 high means high compute. It means it gives it more time, more compute power to optimize. Mini means it's faster, it's meant for smaller tasks, it's still using the reasoning, but they've tried to make the model smaller so that you can throw more often prompts at it. So you can use it more often and iterate faster. And Pro essentially means all the bells and whistles. It means it is like here on this O3 model. If you see something that's labeled Pro or O1 Pro, these are generally the big beefy models that are super expensive. So if we get back to our coding use case, if you're somebody who likes to code and prompt your AI a lot, right? You have your coding sessions and you're asking a lot of questions, you refactor things a lot with the model. I would say O4 Mini is the one you want to get to. We're talking about nearly a 90% rebate. For example, $40 on 1 million token becomes $4.4 instead. Same context window, so this is something still pretty good. But I think that O4 will make the most sense if you're using a coding agent which has to do a lot of iterations. It has to work a lot, it has to answer a lot of your prompts, and you will want to think about it and reflect on it a lot. Versus if you're trying to really get that precise answer, you know where you're getting, and you want the model to work for you and have it almost work out from the first try, O3 is the one you will want to use. So there you have it. I would say that for most things that you want to do nowadays with OpenAI, you will stick with these 3 featured models. Most applications will have really good results if you put GPT-4.1 as a driving model. And for your coding use cases, you will want to use O4 Mini and O3. And lastly, if you're building a consumer basic AI product, you will use the Omni family kind of models. So there you go. Let me know if you liked this short overview, if you'd like me to go over any of these models more in particular, how they're used in vibe coding or whatever. Comment and share the video, and I'll see you in the next one.